Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I have a plan. And I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and I really think we need to do an episode about boxing.
Yeah, we'll have to get to that someday, if time allows. We've returned to explore the inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek, but sometimes, just sometimes, we look at how Trek has influenced the world of sci-fi in its own way, and this week we're looking at Battlestar Galactica, the reboot series, a series that was in many ways inspired by modern Trek, up to and including having an episode that's just about boxing. It's just boxing.
Yep. They got it in there. They really wanted that to happen.
It's so weird, and obviously our discussion about it will take up the remainder of the show, but how one episode was in 1999, and then 7 years later, I think in 2006, it was like, I know what we'll do. How about that boxing thing? That worked pretty good last time.
Yes, and to prepare, I have seen... Actually, I didn't just do this, but I've seen every Rocky movie, so I know everything about boxing. I'm ready to talk about it.
I think that's what they show people, yeah, when they say they want to get into boxing. And
that's all I know about boxing.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about the robot right now. That'll come later after you win a couple titles. Then you can learn about the robot. But obviously, America and capitalism as well.
That's, inextricably connected to boxing, I feel like.
It's weird how... actually, it's not weird. I take that back. The fact that the later Rocky movies, up to and including the Michael Jordan Creed movies, all focus on what the original Rocky was about. You know, it's like, hey, it's tough out here. He got a lot of money, and he's going to fight, and he's got to balance, the poverty and training, and how is he going to do it all. It's weird that, like, the later movies just became, like, Rocky lives in a gigantic mansion, and he's literally fighting, like, a shaved bear, a Russian bear, to defend communism. Like, the 80s were weird, man.
Yeah, and they really, I think they were just like, I don't know if we should just keep making the same movie, because that's what they did for a while. And then eventually they're just, like, fighting in the street. I think Rocky 5, that's what they were doing.
That is Rocky 5. And that was like, it was obviously a huge reaction to Rocky 4, which is the James Brown fighting in Russia. If he dies one. Where Rocky kicks so much ass that the Russian crowd turns on Drago and starts cheering for Rocky. And all the Secret Service guys are looking nervous. They're like, oh no, what's going to happen here? There's like, he's going to start an American riot, like, in Russia.
I mean, he ended the Cold War.
That's right. Yeah. He punched it into submission. Yeah. Total knockout. Anyway, that's not really what boxing is about, I don't think.
Okay. Whoops.
It is the sport of kings, but I feel like most boxing stories tend to go with people who are not in a position of privilege. I don't know if it's the literal metaphor of a fight, or like just to draw on my video game history, Little Mac going up against Mike Tyson or whoever the champ is if we lost the Mike Tyson license.
Mr. Dream, is it?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And I don't know if that factors into what we're talking about today, but we're going to try to fit it in, I guarantee.
I think it maybe could, just with the whole, like Star Trek and, like, Americana. There's some connection there.
It's funny because Starfleet officers are, they're not, we never, like, really see until, I guess, Picard, like, Federation citizens, civilians doing stuff. It's always the military. And although the military, defends and serves the country, there is an air of privilege and rank, that exists within the military. And so to have a provisional commander who's second in command of a ship be the boxing guy, that's kind of like punching down, literally. It's hard to put a character like that in a position of disadvantage to make him the Little Mac or the Rocky Rocky. And that's why I think that like the story is not structured really around that. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I mentioned video games before, and I wanted to have a video game chat because we haven't in a while.
Okay.
Reason being is because recently the Xbox Series X1X, the new Xbox, has just come out. And by the time this episode comes out, the PS5 will be out.
Yes. Are you getting any of these?
Okay, so it took years and years and decades and years, but I'm finally decided, there's no point in early adopting a system. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah. Especially now, I think the steps are getting less and less big, in my opinion. Especially between, I have just like the base PlayStation, but I know they did like the Pro, and so I think the gap between that and the PS5 is even less,
Yeah, and I also came out of the, they always talk about the generations of consoles, and I never know like what's what, but is it the 6th generation? PS3s and all that stuff? PS3, Xbox
yeah, it's
360?
hard to track because like, I forget how many there were before like the NES,
Right.
But I always think of that as one, even though that's
7th.
like 3.
I think it's actually the 7th generation, and the current generation is the 9th. It doesn't matter. The point is that the life of the PS3 was like 15 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they came out with like 4 or 5 versions of it. So I did adopt that early, but it stayed around so long that the feeling felt like, oh no, you got to get in right away, play the life of your machine out, because then there's going to be the slim version or the whatever, and that's when you'll switch up. But I think you're right. I think the generations are now getting shorter again after that longest generation ever. But that being said, there's just nothing. There's no launch titles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing worth having that isn't already on the PS4. Like I want Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man game, but it's on PS4, and it's like, all right, I'll just get it there.
And I think it's gonna be run fine on that too.
Oh, sure.
Because I remember I had a 360, and I remember when this current generation, or that we're leaving behind, came around, and there were some games that were on both. And I remember getting some for my 360, and they felt like not optimized for that at all, and that was disappointing. But it doesn't seem to be the case with this upcoming generation. Like I was watching gameplay of Miles Morales and Assassin's Creed on PS4, and it's like, oh yeah, it looks like, I mean, it looks like a new game for sure, but it's not.
The last
performance issues aren't a thing.
Odyssey looks great on PS4. So, it's sure I want all the bells and whistles, but I bought a 360 for launch, and I ended up selling it in a couple months because I had played like I played the Halo game, and there was just nothing else on it that I really needed to play that I couldn't get anywhere else. So,
right.
So I don't know. I waited on a Switch too. I waited till they came up with the second serial number of Switch.
Good idea.
That was supposedly a little better. But yeah, I think the PS5 is such a beautifully engineered piece of technology that I'm sure that they'll be going on that one for a while. And yeah, I'll just wait till they collect a few more games.
I feel like a year is like a good amount of time to wait.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll do.
You can kind of see where everything lands, in terms of the quality of, and you can kind of make a more informed decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you there. And maybe a price drop will happen too.
Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully. There's plus, if you just look at like my game library and what I'm up to, I don't deserve a next generation machine. I just finished. Yeah. I got about 6 hours off in my crazy work schedule recently, and I actually finished 2 games that I had been right near the precipice of finishing. And one was Assassin's Creed Origins, which is like a very old game now, or a couple years at least. And then I finished Dragon's Dogma, which is
never played that.
Like 10 years old or so. So,
so
it's wasted on me. Yeah, it would be wasted on me to have a next gen machine. movies seem like the mother genre of a lot of other genres, having come around so early at the turn of last century. And it seems like they've informed like how comics and video games are developed and designed. As somebody who contemplates video games and movies a lot on your podcast, Virtual Theater, do you see video games and movies converging in a way?
In what way? And just in terms of games being more cinematic, or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of storytelling. I actually saw a video, I think it was a Polygon video that talked about how the cameras or camera control in video games and young filmmakers growing up playing video games and then, getting into cinema is actually affecting point of view and camera use in cinema.
I can see that. I always think, because I think there's been years of people kind of not embarrassed, but like unsure about video games and like discussing them as
I don't know about these video games.
Yeah. and I think we've seen it like transfer into certain video games trying to just emulate movies, in terms of like having being like, see, they're like movies. So that's like an art. So like they're like this other art. But when I think of like the development of video games as an art form, like some of my favorite games I don't think they really tell their story like movies do. It's not about like cutscenes and cinematics. It's about how you can kind of affect that through gameplay or like something unique that you can only do with interactivity.
People think, a lot of people said, I think when it came out, that the Matrix was very video game-like.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, literally, because it's kind of it's a game that they all play, but just in terms of the visuals and, you reloading your gun and shooting and killing guys and stuff. But, of course, it drew heavily from anime and also from Hong Kong action films. And so there's like this recursive loop that always happens. And when it's good, you get stuff like The Matrix that's original. Mm-hmm. When it's bad, I feel like there's this meme of like the action blank that keeps getting passed back and forth. It's the thing with, a shot of a guy, but, pointing a gun like behind a gun barrel, or like blowing up the plane, and then, we'll jump out of the way, and you gotta jump out of the way, and the plane crashes and explodes, into something. And it's like these things that could, at this point with the graphics on games are so good that it could be Die Hard with a Vengeance, a crappy action movie, or it could be, I don't know, I don't want to put any action games on blast, but, fill in the blank bad action game. And like the really good action filmmakers are trying all kinds of new, amazing things. Same thing in the video game side, but there's still this persistence of like this general action crap that you get in a lot of genre media.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think too about how it can get tossed back and forth. Like I think of like, so there's like games like Tomb Raider or Uncharted or whatever that are like influenced by like things like Indiana Jones or whatever. And so they try to incorporate things like cinematics from that into their game, to kind of remind you of that. But then there's like movies being made about these properties, and it's like, I don't know. It's almost like a game of telephone a little bit between the properties. And so I wonder, I don't know if it's necessary for some of these things to like have a movie
exist. Yeah. And I'm sure the people making them aren't really being encouraged to do anything crazy. If you made, like Uncharted into a movie, he's not going to sit down and talk to Sully over dinner for 2 hours. Like he's not going to be My Dinner with Andre or something like that. It's going to be him swinging from a vine and shooting somebody, but probably less people than Nate Drake actually kills in his games. But there's some genres that can only deliver a certain type of experience too. Like there's never been a really good Fast and the Furious game, which is insane because there are so many movies and it's such a huge property. And I think it's because you can't, I don't know. I don't play a lot of racing games, at least recently, but I think that games still can't really reproduce the feeling of like immense speed or the insane sort of, tricks and jumps and things that they're doing like in a fast movie. And so they'll always have that, capitalized until you VR, or you just find some way to bring that back to games. Like, people really like the F-Zero series, which hasn't had a game in like 20 years or something like that. And one of the reasons that it was so cool compared to Pole Position or whatever other racing games at the time is because it gave you that feeling of speed. Like, it had these, the vector graphics, which were new to console systems, and it just made you feel like, whoa, I'm like really out of control here. Like the way that like Sonic the Hedgehog does too.
With Fast and the Furious, I feel like there's games like where you can do incredible things, but it's kind of like, I think of like Breath of the Wild, like some of the things people come up with that you can do that just like blow your mind, but it's like totally player built. And and it's hard, like that's the kind of way you would want to like have some of those like big stunts from Fast and the Furious come off, is like something that would actually blow your mind. But it, like, I've only seen like set pieces on that level in a game like Uncharted or whatever, where they're kind of scripted. Yeah. And to me, they're less mind blowing because it's like, okay, well, it's like a cutscene I interacted with,
Yeah. Or you get something like GTA 5, which is a huge open world game, and then they want to have like heists or like these movie sequence type scenes where you're going to rob a bank and then get away. But everything is it's not designed to do, that game isn't designed to do that. So everything is so finicky, and you have to like push the Y button, at the right time to get the car off the tracks. And then if you don't do that, then it's like, all you had to do is follow the damn train, CJ. And you have to do it over and over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mashup is a really powerful tool, especially in video games. One of the games that I'm really looking forward to, that's not going to come out for a while, is Age of Calamity for Nintendo Switch, which is they have I can't remember what the first one's called, but there's like Hyrule Warriors. Yeah. That's what it is. And it's like Dynasty Warriors with Link and Zelda characters, which seems like a great idea. Like, let's have Link fight 100 moblins at once. Mm-hmm. But I've played it. It's okay, but it's just Dynasty Warriors, and that series has been free of like original ideas for a long time. So it makes you like wonder, like, why am I doing this? Why am I killing all these moblins? Who cares? And I've played the demo for Age of Calamity, and it's really great because they've taken like all the best bits of Breath of the Wild and mashed them together now with that, fight 100 guys aesthetic.
Okay.
And so it almost feels like if you turned a corner in Breath of the Wild and ended up in an area where, you couldn't just hang glider out. You'd have to stay here for a little while, but it still feels like Breath of the Wild, but now you're fighting like 100 guys at once. Like, that's what it feels like. And you get to play, as Zelda and Impa and all these other characters.
I like what you're saying too. It feels like it gives the Hyrule Warriors gameplay a bit more of a direction too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I always thought Hyrule Warriors kind of like a fun, wacky, almost Fast and the Furious level of goofiness in terms of the like, non-canon story that's going on. Like, that's fun and all, but like it's like, all right, why am I doing this?
Also, Age of Calamity is good because it lets you it sort of programs in a lot of the exploits that I always see people do on YouTube, but I can't pull off. So like, like when you drop a bomb behind you and then you shoot an ice block and the bomb blows up and you can ride the ice block. Mm-hmm. Like, if that's all programmed into some of the characters' moves, so you can just do that like automatically. So it makes me feel like I'm a real Breath of the Wild champ.
Now, when Breath of the Wild 2 comes around and you're not able to do that,
I
feel disappointed.
I don't like this. Well, that was fun. I hope the rest of this is fun. I try to imagine people who want a cross between the people who can enjoy a boxing talk and video game talk at the same time are going to love this show. But we should definitely get to our featured subject for this day's show, and we should tackle these, I think, in order of inspiration. Meaning, we should probably do the Voyager episode first.
I would think so. That makes sense.
Well, let's do it. Science fiction can't always be about fictional science. After all, no matter where they go in the galaxy or in time, the characters in a sci-fi show need to remain grounded in order for viewers to stay connected with them. Sometimes writers accomplish this by checking in with our characters incrementally, giving them scenes where they're not fighting aliens, but fighting their own emotions and feelings about their castmates. Other times, however, a show will stop to focus in specifically on a singular character and explore the depths of their psyche. Sometimes character-specific episodes also become bottle episodes, that is, episodes shot on existing sets in order to save money, which is always a concern on sci-fi series. The danger of a bottle episode is the same as the dangers behind presenting a character-specific episode, that is, narrowing too far the scope of a series that normally hops galaxies and spends too much time with a character who might be unable to hold the focus of a series normally about group drama, and that, I feel, is the issue present in the 5th season Voyager episode, The Fight.
Wednesday on an all-new Voyager.
If we don't find a way out of chaotic space, then we're going to die here.
To escape disaster, one crew member will make the ultimate sacrifice.
It's not an hallucination. It's a prize fight.
Get ready for the main event. Chakotay versus the alien.
You'll be destroyed. I don't know who I'm up against. We have to know, or we're all going to die.
Voyager, all new.
So, are you coming out against Chakotay, the character?
Chakotay, the character, imagine he doesn't exist. Where's Voyager at?
Well,
same place?
we all know I'm not a big Voyager fan in general. Yeah. And I was watching this episode, and I thought that about Chakotay, but a lot of characters came on the screen. I'm like, oh, don't care about you. Tom Paris, don't care about you. Harry Kim, don't care about you. So I that might be for me personally all around a problem. And in fact, there are some, when I see like Neelix, I'm like, you're personally like a repellent character. Like, I hate you. There's like 3 characters on the show I like, or 4 maybe. So, but yeah, Chakotay is not one who I care about.
There's something just so weird about Voyager, and I have now seen the entire series, many, if not most of the episodes, multiple times. So I can say with authority that the feeling I had before I was very familiar with the show is the same feeling I have now, which is the characters aren't differentiated enough from each other in Voyager. And I'll add to that, just because of like what we're going to talk about today, none of them are deep enough, and the things that we learn and the revelations they make about themselves aren't held, in the world of the show long enough to mean anything. They never develop really as characters. We mentioned Chakotay likes boxing in this. First I've heard. We'll never hear again. Also, there's a subplot, I think the most interesting part of the episode, where we learn that, he has a familial illness that he thought that he had escaped, and now it's something that he might have to, he faces in this episode. Who knows if he'll face it, in the future when he gets older. Never comes back. It's just so, every time you go, like when he goes to the bridge after he gets out of his boxing togs, everybody's talking. And I just think on Voyager, if you put like a vocoder or like did that thing with the witness protection program where you changed everybody's voices, I'm not sure I could tell who was saying what line. They're all just completely generic lines. And I think it's because, whoever ran the show or who was in charge, it wasn't important that the characters differentiated themselves. They just kind of became whatever they needed to be for whatever the episode was going to be about, or whatever it was they had to get out of. Mm-hmm. There's some really inventive plots in Voyager. One thing that they wanted to do was to make the Delta Quadrant like a crazy place where crazy things happen. And I think the idea of chaotic space is supposed to be an example of that.
Yeah.
But
I was initially like, I've never seen this episode actually. And I was initially like kind of pushed against this concept. I was like, this seems ridiculous. But then I did kind of have that same thought process where I kind of like that the things they encounter in this show are so outrageous. We encounter plenty of outrageous things in TNG and the original series, but like it just feels different,
Yeah.
It feels like not against the rules, But maybe kind of against the like Star Trek rules of what you feel like you'll encounter, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we're talking about Battlestar today as well, because Ronald D. Moore worked like for a year, I think for like the first year of Voyager, like it worked on and helped out, and basically had the option to continue and was like, fuck it, I'm going to quit. And I'm also going to make a show that's basically the premise of Voyager. It is a ship lost, low on resources, that's off on its own and is trying to get home. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it the way that you guys said you were going to do it, which was we're going to see these people change. We're going to see these people be affected by this and kind of go off the reservation instead of just being clean pressed uniforms every single week up until the very last episode. That's kind of like, that's the whole argument that people always make about Voyager is like, it's a premise completely deferred.
That's what I don't like about it. Yeah. And what drew me, I've never seen all of Battlestar. I watched like the first season, like a long time ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must be really confused by the episode that we watched then.
Yeah. I had no idea. Well, actually it kind of worked because like they had flashbacks and it was specifically tied to that. So, I enjoyed the episode actually. Good. But yeah, that always like drew me to it. I don't know why I stopped watching. This was like, I can't even remember what I was doing at the time, but like, I did feel like, at least in that first season I watched, that came across in a way that Voyager had always disappointed me.
Well, let's talk about why we're talking about both of these, other than them being about boxing nominally. They're both written by Michael Taylor, at least the Voyager episode. The story comes from Michael Taylor. It's his idea. And then Joe Menosky wrote the script. And then Michael Taylor wrote the script and the story for the Battlestar Galactica episode, Unfinished Business, that we'll talk about. As far as I could tell, looking back into his background, I don't see that he ever boxed. So for me, I'm trying to figure out why this guy would do two separate shows, boxing episodes that are not, intercut with somebody introspecting about their life and their place, in their world.
It kind of made me think of that whole like story about like the giant spider in Wild Wild West.
This is Michael Taylor's giant Wild Wild West spider.
Yeah,
isn't that John Peters
like
moment.
The Kevin Smith story or whatever? Yeah, where like that's just something he thinks is really interesting and really cool for a character, and so he wanted to do it, and then he wanted to do it again.
I guess, he's a very accomplished writer and producer. I mean, he started on Deep Space Nine. He wrote a lot of Voyager episodes. I know he produced, but he also wrote for the Dead Zone reboot. And then, of course, he worked on Battlestar Galactica for a while. He got along really well with Ronald D. Moore because he also worked on their pilot Virtuality, which was not picked up to series, and the Caprica show, which is the sequel or prequel show to Battlestar Galactica. And then he went on to co-create Defiance, and he wrote on Turn, the Revolutionary War show, and he works on Into the Badlands. And so I didn't have time to go through his other work, but I couldn't find any evidence of other boxing episodes. It isn't like George Washington's like, all right, take my teeth out, let's do this, and they just throw down, with whoever. It just seems like two navies, two military, in this case space navies, both have, we're just going to box in both scenarios, and I don't know. Yeah, other than it just being an obsession for him, there's nothing in his life that would explain why he's doing this.
I mean, maybe he's just a casual fan,
Yeah, I suppose.
Like, it makes me think of, I was kind of mentioned earlier, like, the Americana or whatever, like, Star Trek has this thing where it, like, wants to kind of connect us to our things we can relate to,
Yeah.
And you see that with baseball, too. Like, we all know, like, Cisco, he loves baseball, and they're always talking about baseball.
Sure.
But I had the same kind of feeling when I was recently watching the TNG episode Evolution, and the doctor from Scrubs is there, and he's just going on and on with a baseball metaphor, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It's Ira Stephen Bear wrote that episode.
Yeah, so that's like, did I don't know, he didn't play baseball, or maybe he did. but he loves it.
Don't give away the future of our podcast,
sorry.
We may be focusing in on another sport that seems to persist in one writer's career later in the year.
Yeah. So I just think like they're probably sitting around, and I think he probably wanted to carry that to Battlestar Galactica too, because like, you know, it's supposed to at least like feel realistic, you know.
I think it makes a lot of sense in Battlestar because it's kind of like a macho world. Ironically, it's a world that has completely like, you know, overcome gender and like sexual stereotyping. So like men and women are the same essentially. But at the same time, it's also a world where everybody's like, yeah, whatever. You want some, come get it. And so like I can see them beating the shit out of each other. Would boxing still be like a sport people like in the world of Star Trek? Like I can see it being a sport. I think they're cool with different sports, but you know, Chakotay talks about this great match that he saw, and I guess he mentions that it was in the Badlands or whatever, so maybe it wasn't like Federation Central, but it just seems like they would. I mean, the Doctor is aghast that anybody would do this. Like, he really gives Chakotay the third degree about getting his head kicked in.
It's sort of, it makes me wonder what because the writers of Star Trek usually view like kind of certain classical things that like probably no one would care about in the future as like they've stuck around, persisted because they're like highbrow and intellectual, but like TV disappears, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. the thing that you're on.
Right. Yeah. But I wonder about boxing. I feel like, see, that could be an interesting like thing about Chakotay's character if he liked this thing that you know, other people had kind of turned against, at least maybe in the Federation, but maybe other worlds, you know, still practice this. But
I guess
I don't know. Boxing is kind of a, you know, it's kind of a classic sport. I feel like
it's Sport of Kings. It's the sweet science. Norman Mailer writes about boxing.
I think it would persist into the future, you know, especially as other types of martial arts and stuff like that evolve too. Like, I don't see why not boxing wouldn't stick around.
Why would Chakotay like it though? He's such a dork, and he's
that so, I don't know.
I feel like he is such an iconoclast in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously he comes from a Native American background. He also, he's not from Earth. He's from another planet. Didn't they originally want? I think it's like beta canon, but like the planet that they have to throw the Native Americans off of in Journey's End was like that was his planet, supposedly.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, his colony. And so he's not, he's not an Earthling. He is, part of another kind of culture. Plus he's a Maquis. He lives in the Badlands or whatever. I don't know. It just seems like doesn't Robert Beltran like boxing?
Does he? He could.
Well, supposedly that's the deal. Let me tell you about the origins of the episode. So Michael Taylor submitted this story, but apparently what he submitted got heavily rewritten. His original idea was that there would be like a character in the 21st century who would feel like he was going crazy and hearing voices, and that would connect somehow to Chakotay sort of suffering the same thing, and so they're connected like somehow. And Joe Menosky says that like he really liked the idea, and they sent it on up the chain to Rick Berman, but Rick Berman was like, this is crap. Rick Berman actually said, quote, "These goddamn people like Mike Taylor.
Wow.
You need a subscription to the Journal of American Medical Association to understand the goddamn story," and just basically threw it away. And so Menosky had to try and save it because they had to stay, on schedule. And so he started to rewrite it. And then apparently some of the guys went to dinner with Robert Beltran, and they're like, we want to do this episode. Like, what do you think? And they started kicking around ideas, and they came up with the idea of a boxing thing. So I'm not even sure that it was Taylor's idea in the first place, which makes this even weirder.
Oh, so do you think maybe... Well, I was going to say maybe he wanted to recreate his success, but it doesn't sound like this got over well as a successful episode.
No, this is thought of as one of the worst episodes of Voyager. It has an IMDb rating of 5.2.
That's too bad. I felt like it was bad, but conceptually, everything in it is cool. You know, like character being into boxing sounds cool to me. Chaotic space.
Boothby is his cut man. Like, we just have to stick Boothby in there one more time.
That was a little egregious, I thought.
I mean, it's great to see Ray Walston, but like everybody can't know Boothby. Come on.
Yeah, that's a little. I like when things connect in Star Trek, like in that like continuity and stuff. But that feel egregious. Like it doesn't feel realistic. It took me out of it. I did like him as kind of his Mickey or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It would have been better if they just went more for a parody of Mickey from Rocky. Like, that would have been a lot more entertaining. But, yeah, like that concept was fun. Not done well, but, like, chaotic space, too. That concept was cool. And then, yeah, the concept of, like, him dealing with, or, like, speaking with a family member, you know, who had passed or whatever, who had kind of like this thing he inherited from him. Like, all that stuff sounds cool. Like, I don't know why you couldn't make it work.
It's a lot of hats.
Yeah, but I think, you know, they're both like kind of like, I thought the boxing in Battlestar, that episode had its issues, but like it at least made sense how the boxing connected to their history, you know.
Yeah.
But then I feel like maybe with the Star Trek thing, too, they threw in the chaotic space, and that might have been what overdid it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a deceptively simple construction, because really all that needs to happen is that Chakotay just needs to let these guys talk through him or guide him into, you know, getting the ship out of this chaotic space or whatever. That's all that's really going on here. But then they put all these like hats on top of it, and none of them ever really get satisfyingly done or explored. And the show itself was too short. Like, one of the reasons that they put the frame in where we just start and it's like, get him out, and we're already in like sick bay, is just because they needed to fill more time. And I'm like, in an episode where Chakotay is boxing with Boothby in the holodeck, the ship is in chaotic space that apparently is something that the Borg are scared of, then Chakotay is afraid he's losing his mind because his grandfather had like a genetic, like, mental disease. He's also, you know, visiting his grandfather's spirit on his spirit journey. All those things connect through each other, and you still don't have enough time to fill out an episode. You have to have the doctor just give a whole speech about what happens when you get punched in the face or something like that. And it's like, it's good, but this is clearly just like filling time. We're just like vamping to make this episode stick together. Like, I don't know how they could take so many concepts and still not have enough. And I think it's because none of them are explored.
I was about to say, none of them are really explored.
Yeah, it's very succinctly wrapped up. Like, what are they spending so much fucking time on that the resolution is like 4 minutes of just like, you got to do this, let me do it. And then they're out. And it's like, that was it?
Yeah, I feel like, with your hats thing, like if you took out one of those three elements and tried to focus on the connection between the other two, it doesn't even matter which, like, it could have, maybe if it was an episode about this hereditary gene or whatever he had, and then the aliens are affecting that could have been cool. Or you don't need that, and maybe it could have been the aliens are just trying, the only way they can communicate with him is through his memories.
Yeah, like
he didn't need to have the gene or whatever for them to talk like to them.
Did the aliens that the Voyager finds, like the guys that were dead or whatever, did those guys have the same gene or something like that? Like, is that how, you know, the aliens were trying to get to them?
Maybe that's why they failed.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's really the most interesting part of the story for me is the idea of a big, tough Maquis guy is afraid to experience pain. He's afraid to age. He's afraid to become somebody that relies on other people. That's a very fascinating and I think fitting character trait for this, you know, this tough guy who's got a tattoo on his face. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't want to because he saw his grandfather deteriorate. He saw him get kind of goofy and things like, I don't want to be like that. And it's manifested in this great metaphor in the episode about you got to let the guy punch you. You want to be the guy that dances around. That's not the kind of boxer you are. You got to absorb his blows. You got to wear him out. And that becomes manifest later on where Chakotay has to just, do the fight and let the guy punch him because that's how he's giving him the information. But man, you got to get through a lot to get to that part.
I did, out of context. If it had good context, that part would be actually great. But I did like that sequence out of context. It all kind of reminded me of the emissary from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, they talk like the prophets, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that is maybe because that's a two-parter, and they explore a lot of things in that. But they do actually explore these things he's having memories about, and they do tie simply together in a way. So I don't know. I liked the.
Now I wish that we'd watch the emissary and then this.
There's still time to do the emissary. Yeah, like it just on an aesthetic level, I kind of liked it because I really love that sort of because it's something like it's a cool aspect about Star Trek is sometimes you encounter these aliens that are like beyond your comprehension, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I always love that idea. There's something so like terrifying, but it's like almost like Lovecraftian or something, where you just can't even, it doesn't even make sense how they are to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Star Trek, it's another thing I don't think Star Trek does all that well is horror. And
no, yeah.
That idea, when you think about it, every day, Star Trek has based its whole edifice on no, space is fine. They're blue. They've got things in their heads, but they're like us. Mm-hmm. And in reality, we don't know in reality, but it could be a lot more like, I don't understand what I'm looking at, or you're looking at a trinary star system and with a black hole and it's warping space. And it's just like, I just don't understand what I'm seeing. Like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And Star Trek very rarely nails that sort of thing. And I think that it's so muddled in this episode that it doesn't even, it's hard to understand, what you pointed out, that this is like emissary, basically. This is like weird aliens trying to talk to a guy and he's not getting it. I also think it's funny that this episode starts with him having a head injury and then we keep asking him to remember things like, the guy got knocked out. How do you go in the holodeck and let it knock you out? Can you put the safety settings on fuck me up a little?
Yeah, it's like you have the Doom or Wolfenstein levels of please don't hurt me.
Yeah. Bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point you make. This, I did think about watching this a couple times, this could be scary. But it's not. The Emissary doesn't need to be scary, that episode, but this could have made a great horror episode.
Yeah.
I think really, there's so many great horror movies about someone just psychologically deteriorating, this could have been The Shining or something, but
yeah. Oh yeah. All boxing and no playing makes Chakotay something. But I don't think that's their brand. I don't think that Star Trek would want to do that. And when he meets Kid Chaos and he's got space face or whatever, it's just obviously we're trying to connect it to this chaotic space thing that they're experiencing. But yeah, what if it was an insane, non-geometric monster or a swirl of color or just something that you couldn't understand. There's I don't know if I've referenced this in the show before, but I know I reference it a lot. The one Star Trek novel I've read is called Eye of the Beholder, and it's by Peter David, the legendary writer Peter David. And in it, the Enterprise finds what they think is, they find a structure in space, and they beam inside it. Of course they do. Just jump right in. And everybody on the away team just throws up and screams and passes out. And Data's the only guy left. And what they figure out over the course of the book is that it's an alien museum, similar to the inner light, like this species was going to die out, and they wanted to make sure that their culture was preserved. So they put all this artwork and all these things in this time capsule they could send out into space. But what they didn't, the irony of it is that they were like a non-Euclidean geometric species. They were like a Lovecraftian type species.
Oh.
And so the sensation and the experience of their art and work would drive people like insane.
That's so sick.
There's a good resolution, because by the end of it, like, they figure out, okay, maybe we could like use these perception filters, and Mr. Data will rent you out, every other week. You can go, because he can like, he can absorb it. Like, you can go help these people out and explore, and we're going to get this stuff down. We're going to do it. This is what we do. But take some Dramamine, like, before you go in.
Yeah, that's an amazing concept. Yeah, I would love to see something like that in Star Trek. I feel like they're trying to like get a little bit freakier in Star Trek sometimes, but
yeah, they get a little freaky in Star Trek.
I think of like, isn't there like there's like a Discovery episode where there's like a monster that like is tearing people up and stuff like that.
Like the tardigrade?
Yeah, isn't the tardigrade? Don't they find that and it like wrecks a couple people and it's kind of scary?
Yeah. Yeah, even though, I mean, I guess it's not an actual tardigrade, which they should probably not call it a tardigrade then, but like real tardigrades just like suck water up through their little nose, and that's
this is a badass tardigrade.
But this thing's like, yeah.
That was kind of a horror episode.
Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to think of something else to fucking say about this episode. We get a vision quest. We get he's far from the sacred places of his grandfathers.
He actually says, "I'm far from the bones of my ancestors."
Yes, the bones of my ancestors.
I never know how to feel about some of these things. Like, that's another reason Chakotay is like the worst character for me, because like all of the like native stuff is so, it's like, it's offensive to me.
Yeah. I mean, I get...
It's not really present here in this episode as much.
Like, the only... I don't know. I feel like, CBS Trek is doing its own thing. That's fine. But I feel like they also know that they have, like, a checklist of stuff to, like, rectify. And they can only do so much, in such an amount of time. And so recently they've just introduced a non-binary character and a trans character, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, shit, we can finally, check that off. The list is like a CVS receipt. Like, it just keeps going. And someday they're going to have to rectify like native representation, right? They're going to have to like cast a Native American actor and then have them observe like a religious practice that is not complete bullshit like this thing is.
Yeah. And I mean, I have faith in them. Like, I haven't really been like feeling Discovery or anything, but like the way they introduced those new characters was like it was like not offensive, if that makes sense, like it wasn't egregious, and like it didn't feel like it did in the 90s when they tried to have these things like the story. I think of like episodes like The Outsider or whatever, where
The
it's
Outcast?
like The Outcast, yeah, where like I think there is a good message there, but there's a lot of weird stuff in it too, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
And mostly because I think that good writing is good writing and bad writing is bad writing. And I think that even if you don't exactly know what you're doing and maybe it's not your story to tell, you can still help. I think the chances of your help are being helpful are very low, but it can still be. And when I think about The Outcast, not a lot happens in that episode. Mm-hmm. It's basically just Riker hanging out with Soren. I can't remember the character's name.
I think that's
Something
right.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And she's asking him about his dick. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of like groundbreaking stuff happening, but just like sitting in and living with those characters and seeing them perceive each other in a new way and being like, I don't know, man. Like, I think this could be a thing. Why not? Like, I think that can be really healthy. Whereas, even with the best intentions involved, you can just very heavy-handedly try to present something that could be done in a more creative way, in a way that I don't know. I'm frustrated. Look, I guess we're going to talk about it. I'm frustrated about the Discovery thing because they introduce a trans character and immediately kill them off. In fact, they're dead before we even meet them.
Okay.
And it's like, how often are you going to do this, guys? Well, you understand. You have the checklist. You know, when you introduce these characters, you're doing it specifically to not only have a cool character, but to add more diversity. And you are falling into the same tropes that LGBTQ people have been frustrated with for a long time, like killing off gay characters, like you did with Culber in the first season. And I know you brought him back.
But I think they're doing the exact same thing where it's like this character is dead, but at the end of the episode, they're like, oh, they're still around,
but there's space magic, yeah.
They're gonna come back. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No, which is an even worse implication, really, is that all these characters.
Well, it's bad for your universe. It's bad for your universe because death doesn't mean anything. Yeah, forget representation. Like, is there any threat in your universe?
Okay, I'm with you there in that context. I was just thinking more of like the portrayal of the character felt like a real person. And it didn't feel like, them trying really hard to have a trans character, you know?
I agree. I mean, obviously, I think that they are doing everything they can to publicize this. You know, they did do this to get a pat on the back, but it's also cool that they have a character that is interesting, will be revealed to have depth, hopefully down the line, you know, and we're just adding to our bouquet or our buffet of delights, you know, on the show. Mm-hmm. But I think something like The Outcast, which is written by a straight woman and features, you know, a romance between a male actor and a female actor, like in a lot of ways it's not, and then has a very like heavy-handed sort of like, oh boy, message at the end. It still has persisted. People still look back at it and go, this is important because it shows what we can accomplish in Star Trek. You know, it shows the kind of storytelling we can do.
That's what I mean, where I feel like it has a good message, but it's sort of like the unintended thing of like the 90s because I also think of it as an episode about like all these characters. It reminds me a little bit of Angel 1 because all these characters are talking about how gender is irrelevant or like it's outdated, you know, and like, oh, you humans, you have this binary gender, but like, and I get it, they're not thinking about it at this time, they're not thinking that far ahead, but like, you know, like that's already not true, you know, like it makes me think of all these little things. It makes me think of Lal walking around the Enterprise going gender female, like just looking at people and gender, you know, going gender male, and it's like I guess you're right, yeah. But anyway, like the point of that story ends up being like a group of people who are like gender is outdated, and someone's like, no, I want to be a binary gender. It's just weird to me, that implication, you know, that it's like,
yeah, but it's it's who she is, it's who she wants to be,
right?
So.
And it's not actually about. It's a metaphor for something that's not gender, and they weren't really thinking about gender at the time.
Yeah, it's really about orientation, but it without again, because they don't know and they're not informed. Yeah. They made it about being cis or
right. So it reminds me on the flip side of like when they go to the Native American planet and they're trying to do like a good thing, but it has all these things they didn't even think about, you know.
I think well, the thing is now is that, even the good guys get really excited about stuff, probably too excited, when everything, especially in Star Trek, everything is done and presented in a positive way. And there are 900 episodes. Do you know what I mean? So even if like you don't think that the Outcast nails it or does something you don't like, we don't have to like totally burn it down and just scream about how horrible it is. Like it could just be something, where you go like, I have a favorite movie and there's a couple things in that movie that I'm like, I wish they'd done this instead of that, but it's still my favorite
It's a
movie.
piece of art and you can look at it and kind of critique it or like have your own opinions. Yeah. Except if it's like, it makes me think of whatever Code of Honor or whatever. It's just like the most abhorrent piece of Star Trek I've ever seen.
But from a very positive and quote unquote helpful place that came. You know, they did that. Well, actually, they did that. It's a little weird because they were supposed to be lizards, and then they couldn't do that. It was too expensive, and so they're like, "What if they're all black people?" And it's like Space Wakanda. It's like, yeah, but don't try to tackle that. Something that makes me mad is that when the writing is bad, it kind of fucks everything up. So like, no kidding. so they just recently, brought this character. Well, we're just talking about this now. Fuck the fight.
This is great. Yeah, I love it.
They've got this non-binary character on Discovery now, and then they brought this like trans character on, but the character is also a conjoined trill, and that's like my nightmare because it's like, guys, don't you want to just show that there are people in the 23rd century, the future of Star Trek, who are non-binary, who are a trans, and it has nothing to do with an alien changing their brain or whatever. That's just who they are, and everybody accepts it, and it's cool. And Alex Kurtzman came out and said he gave a reason, and I hate it because the reason makes sense, but I still hate it. And he said that the reason that they made this character be trans in connection with the symbiote is because, yes, they already feel that way in their future, but we're not going to go back in time to the first time that, Captain Kirk shook a trans person's hand or something like that. Like, we don't have any way to show where that acceptance came from, so we have to tell, in our metaphor, we have to put another metaphor in that shows the story of somebody, accepting who they are and like coming out this way. And I'm like, yeah, but
it doesn't have to be with the same character though.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah. Just present it and then we'll just accept it and move on.
Well, yeah.
I don't understand why you have to like sell it to us. Like it's like the meatloaf, coming into the hangar or whatever. It's not meatloaf.
Right. I think about how like they will have characters who like they'll have characters like say Sulu or Uhura or whatever, and that was meant to be progressive at the time, but then like they will tell other stories about prejudice, like you have characters being prejudiced against Spock or whatever in the one episode, the submarine episode. But and it's you can show that like you can still tell those stories that people connect to, but like it's to me I like if this was a thing in Existence is Futile, when me and Mary we would talk about like, okay, they have all these women on the ship and stuff, and that's cool, but she was always kind of dismayed because like every week they'd encounter a new race that was like horny and sexist to them, it's right. Like it's like kind of a half measure, you know what I mean? Like you can tell almost like the Outcast, like you can tell a story about something, but it can be packaged in this different way. That's like kind of the point of sci-fi, is you can use these different things that we don't normally encounter as like the metaphor,
Yeah.
So you could have this non-binary character and this trans character, and then you can tell us like that's kind of how you trick dum-dums into like being accepting, is that you tell it from a kind of a point of view that they wouldn't have all these kind of preconceived opinions about,
Yeah, I guess. Like everybody's on board though. I don't think we have to trick anybody who's still watching Star Trek. The first
right, and I don't think Star Trek's specific purpose should also be to explain things to dummies. Yeah, but
the first female captain in the franchise is Captain Rachel Garrett. We see her commanding the Enterprise C in battle, and there isn't any subplot about how, I don't know if she can handle this, but it's couched in the fact that, she's been wounded or something like that. Now, forget the fact that she gets killed. It doesn't matter. But, she's... we've spent 2.5 seasons with Captain Picard and the flagship, and we know that these are the best people in Starfleet, and the people that came before them must have been pretty great too. And here they come, and it's Captain Garrett on her, Enterprise C. So, you can just do stuff. Like, you don't have to wean people onto things or off of things. I don't know.
Yeah. Or how many times do they tell a story about prejudice that was just using Brent Spiner, to get the idea across, like, I don't know.
The literal whitest guy on the show is like, he's a slave.
Maybe there's a critique of that too, but I don't know. I think it works better than to, write
than having a Mexican guy be a Native American.
Right. Or, they didn't have like episodes really about like Geordi getting like discriminated against or anything,
Right.
That would have been antithetical to the point of what they were trying to do.
Somebody pitched it.
Oh, I'm sure. That's
Somebody
why we
did.
didn't get many good Geordi episodes.
They do. Every other one is him like in chains somewhere. They do get his shirt off a couple times because he's secretly jacked.
Yeah, I mean
I think when you start, I mean, he's probably just into like kayaking or something like that. I don't really know his life, but like when you start your career on TV, stripped to the waist, getting hit with a whip, as an actor, you probably go, I don't know, my shirt could come off at any time. So
that's what I'm known for,
on TNG, they get his shirt off, and he looks pretty good. I feel like he does everybody gets captured on TNG like all the time, but Geordi's the one that's always getting like chained up or like tortured or something like that. Don't you think that already kind of exists?
Yeah, and I think it's more of the kind of like inherent, like kind of unspoken, quiet part racism that he probably just experiences, and just in terms of not really ever getting, like, I don't think his character's ever really explored, or like, when it does, it's always kind of demeaning,
It never happens to Worf.
Well, Worf gets the crap beat out of him all the time, I feel like.
Yeah, I think he gives as good as he gets, but he doesn't get like chained to walls and things like that.
Yeah.
the fight. The fight against poor representation on sci-fi shows. Anything else to say about the fight?
No, I liked his little boxing outfit. That was cute.
There was a story he was talking about how, and I mean, I would argue how far he could have gotten in his journey, but they told him he was going to do this, and he's like, "Great, give me some time. Schedule it later. I'm going to work with a boxing trainer, and we're going to, up my physicality, reach LeVar Burton levels." And then they turned around and they're like, "Well, actually, we got to do this like in a week." And he's like, "I guess I'll just wear a shirt because I didn't like get the abs that I wanted."
Yeah, it was believable, I guess. Like, they're all wearing shirts in the Battlestar episode.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like
except
no one looks
Starbucks
cool.
just wears her sports bra all the time.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, no one ever had, like, it would have been ridiculous if they came out looking like Apollo Creed or something. Living in America.
Oh, God, I wish that had happened. That's not the Apollo that we're talking about, though, unfortunately.
Could use some pomp and circumstance in some of this stuff.
Yeah. Come out with a big top hat on. Well, we will be back to talk about Apollo in just a little bit. We're going to take a break from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more backtricking.
So, Caliban, you finally show your face. Just in time for me to blow it off.
It's fitting you chose to hide in this abandoned movie theater, Mika and Hana, because for you, the show's over.
Big talk, but soon you'll be as dead as all the well-loved celebrities we lost this year.
When I'm done, they'll be cleaning you off the walls like COVID-19.
Wait, where's your face mask?
I thought we were going to fight outside.
Oh, come on!
I mean, if the murder hornets aren't out there still.
Take this.
You want to watch HBO Max on my phone?
I'll start cooking some beans in this old boot.
Just Enough Trope. News, reviews, and apocalyptic views every Monday on the Just Enough Trope Network.
Won't the 5G kill us? Shh. Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the other side of this equation. On paper, the Battlestar Galactica reboot had to have seemed like a bad idea. reviving a barely remembered, cheesy 70s sci-fi series on a network known mostly for developing cinematic treasures like Mansquito would probably be a hard sell to any sci-fi fan or sci-fi producer. But Ronald D. Moore, David Icke, and a handful of former Star Trek writers conspired to update the premise of the original Battlestar to reflect our modern political times and to bring the sort of thoughtful sci-fi normally seen on shows like Star Trek to the revived property. The result was a sometimes frustrating, but always an engrossing and visceral take on tragedy, loss, and destiny that revitalized serialized sci-fi storytelling for the 21st century. But you can't always be serialized. Sometimes, like any sci-fi series, you have to pump the brakes and do a bottle episode because you've got unfinished business.
What really happened between Starbuck and Apollo? I love Cadbury's!
We got married, can you believe it?
And good luck. You're gonna need it. Find out everything. An all-new Battlestar Galactica in 2 weeks. Part of the all-new Sci-Fi Friday.
Unlike the episode The Fight, this has a rating of 7.48 on IMDb.
Okay.
And yet, it was voted the second worst Battlestar Galactica episode of all time, just below Black Market at 7.3. And Black Market is the worst episode of Battlestar.
Okay.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Answer me this, just for my own personal whatever. I've seen the first season. Is the rest of the show, is it good? Should I ever pick it back up and finish it?
Like any show, it gets complicated. It gets convoluted at the end. There's some times that they are wrapping up things in the style that they do in this episode that they shouldn't have, or it doesn't really matter. But yeah, they in 4 seasons, and it's crazy to think that there's only 4 seasons of this show because it feels like so much material just having watched it. But in 4 seasons, they nail it pretty hard, and yeah, and I think it's totally worth it. In fact, this show, people forget, this show was huge in the aughts. I think Time Magazine called it the best show of the year, perhaps of the decade, in 2005 or 2006 for its third season.
I played a board game based on it that was a lot of fun a long time, which
Vipers, and yeah,
that was kind of cool. Okay, so that sounds good to me, because if this is one of the worst episodes, like, just watching it out of context, I was kind of into it. Like, I was like, there's something here.
I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree. One of its strengths was its serial storytelling. I think that, with the Berman breaks taken off, the show under the control of Ron Moore would sometimes it's okay to restrain yourself. Sometimes the show would go way out there in a way that you never could on Star Trek, but also it would never pull any punches, pun intended, and land some really striking story ideas, some striking visuals that you wouldn't have got on Star Trek because you're like, nah, that's not our brand.
Yeah, I'm a Worf stan, and so by proxy a Ronald Moore stan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the serialized storytelling was a big part of that because they really nailed what I think a lot of people want to see out of Star Trek, what they're trying to do now, and I don't think that they're really doing very well, which is a serial story that yet gives you satisfaction in an hour.
Yes.
So, yes, we are on the way to somewhere. Yes, we are still trying to work on that one thing. But this week, we are doing this. And the show is completely and utterly committed to that, down to having a current updated crawl of the amount of humans left, in the universe, in the opening sequence.
Yeah. That was so good.
They'd have that same, 30 seconds, 45 seconds in the opening that would show you where they've been up to this point. And then so as soon as you hear, "Huh!" then you know that, here come scenes from the upcoming episode you're about to watch. And I would never watch those. I would always shut my eyes when I watch the show because I don't want to know what's coming. I'm going to see it.
That's totally fair. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little preview of what's coming up. And they really committed to that and worked really hard on delivering stuff like that every week.
The characters from, I don't really remember many of them. I remember Edward James Olmos because he's kind of a memorable guy. And I remember Starbuck. but like,
Yeah.
even just dipping back into this, like the characters felt really strong to me. Like the story they told, I really thought was interesting. And I don't know. I don't want to just like bash some of the current Star Trek shows that are kind of trying to tell a story in the same way, but sometimes I feel like everyone with this last episode actually that we've been talking about, like when they had that dinner scene and everyone was just bickering and arguing, I'm like, why is everyone arguing right now? Like, I don't get it. Like, I get what they're trying to do, but like it didn't connect with me, and like it didn't feel like I just didn't really connect with any of the characters, you know? Where in this, like, there is a very intense love quadrangle going on.
Yeah.
But like I bought it. I was like, yeah, this feels real.
This episode, one of the reasons a lot of people didn't like this episode is because it was a real hard stop in the middle of literally from the miniseries movie, you know, that started the show till now was just a long, nonstop serialized story. And this is one of the first times that they really stopped, and the entire episode is sort of like hijacked by these flashbacks. And I think that frustrated people a lot, but I think that it really made sense in terms of what had happened previously, and also what they're kind of exploring in this episode, which is the idea that, and sorry, buddy, it's been 15 years. I'm going to have to spoil a little bit of what happens in Battlestar Galactica to talk about this. But, you know, at this point in the story, they've been searching, you know, for the 13th colony. They're looking for a new home, and they've been under Laura Roslin's leadership as president. And at the end of the second season, there is a presidential election. And of course, one of the reasons Time liked this show so much is it got heavily political, because this is in the aftermath of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, and everything that's going on in Iraq, you know, the ISIS resistance, and them instituting a new president and all this. And of course, our own president, who was blamed for all these failures of diplomacy and governance. And so at the end of the second season, known think Gaius Baltar, you know, wins the presidency of the remaining colonies. And so they find this Earth-like planet, and he says, search is over. We're just going to stay here. And most people who understand their quest think this is a terrible idea, but everyone is exhausted. And, you know, the series picks up in season 3, and it's, you know, a year and a half later, and they've been living on this planet. And we see in this episode the decision, we see the unfinished business. We see what we never saw. The show is famous for making this like 18-month time jump where everybody's all different and Starbuck has long hair. But this episode is like a chance to like look back and go, what were they thinking? You know, how did they make these decisions? And we see Roslin and Adama being like, maybe we don't have to do this. We thought that we were on this destiny, you know, quest to find this new home, and maybe we're all we've got. And maybe this could be home. Maybe this could be, you know, our new Eden. And of course, we don't have a show if that's true, so they have to be wrong. But yeah. And for me personally, I don't know. I remember seeing this episode and being like, the revelations weren't revelatory. You guys are so good at telling this story that I think we knew all this. We knew something happened between Lee and Starbuck. We knew that Lee and his wife and Anders and Kara were like not vibing anymore.
Maybe that's why it worked for me, is because I didn't have that baggage.
Because it filled you in.
Yeah,
it filled you in. Yeah. But I felt by the time that we got to this point, yeah, you were just telling us stuff that everybody lauded the amazing like risk of just jumping, you know, 18 months ahead in the storyline. And now you're kind of hedging your bets and you're going back and filling us in. And also everybody's just beating the piss out of each other. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a very different context than the fight. You know, it's very similar in structure. Of course, it's boxing and its characters, you know, being driven inside their own minds, but it's a lot different.
If I go through this, I would love to see how I come out of this one again, because I could already see like just the way they intersperse the cuts of the flashbacks was pretty egregious. Like it'd be like punch, flashback, punch, and it's just like,
yeah.
we could have gotten this over a better way. I feel like, you know, that's like it wasn't. I don't think it was like shot particularly well or like edited together well. And so I could see if you're like a fan of this and have been following along, and they're like, here's the story going on, and then like flashback. All right, here's the story. Like it kind of takes you out of it, I bet.
There's actually a 70-minute version of this episode, which sounds horrific. However, I think that you can tell just in this episode that if they're going to go through like all the major pairings and all the grudges that everybody has, it needs more time to sort of to fill those out. And I think they knew that going in, and they overwrote it and thought they could cut it down to something that made more sense. But instead, most of the fights are just sort of background violence, and the only real like significant ones are, you know, obviously when Adama's like, I'm going to show the chief, you know, what I think of him, and they have that fight, and then of course the Lee Starbuck fight.
Yeah,
which is so
they should have cut
so
it down.
Yeah, it's so cheesy because it's like, you know, these characters, you know, they've had this relationship, they love each other, but they also want to choke each other out sometimes, and now they literally get to do it, and it's like you never let them actually do that, right? Because what happens? You end up with them in a clinch, boxing style, but actually like holding and hugging each other and saying like, "Oh, I missed you, I missed you too."
The payoff was really bad. Yeah, like them hugging at the end. That was pretty cringe.
Yeah, like we get it. The best part of that was like the spouses like on the outside, just like, here we go again. I
kind of thought it was going towards, because like it turned into like kind of this, you know, bitter fight, and people were leaving and the spouses were leaving, and I was like, that's kind of a cool ending, you know, like
they're still going at it.
Yeah, they took it too far. It's horrifying. Yeah. Even their spouses know. Everyone knows. Like, this is ugly. Let's all leave. But then they're like hugging and saying, "I missed you." I was like, I don't know if we needed that extra bit there.
I mean, we get it.
Yeah.
Or what if it? Yeah. Why because this show isn't afraid of ending on a downer note for sure. Like, why not? Maybe this is a little too artsy, but why not just have it go to credits like with them still fighting, like the sound of blows like landing on each other?
Yeah. Then you have sort of. I mean, you still have this question of like what happens now, but like,
yeah,
even more so. Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've seen the show, but I think in the show this is a turning point for them where it's pretty much like the end of their respective marriages after this, and we kind of go on from there. Yeah, everybody beating up on each other. You know, Adama explains what the tradition is for. It's literally for, you know, you're out at sea, you're in space, you've got a lot of people frustrated with each other. You know, they have grudges. It turns into violence, so we do this instead. And it's like, is this a good idea? Because it's just a bunch of people lining up to like kick the shit out of each other and just expressing something that they probably should try to think out and go, well, maybe I shouldn't hate Starbuck for stealing my pudding last week. No, I'll just beat the shit out of her instead.
Yeah, but I guess I thought it kind of worked. I don't know the full world here, but it was kind of gritty and like,
yeah,
you know, this is like the post 9/11 world.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what this show is.
It both tries to do like the Voyager thing of like, you know, we're stranded in space, and the Enterprise thing of like telling this post 9/11 sci-fi story. So it's got a lot going on. It's weird.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's weird how everybody abandoned Star Trek almost immediately to go to Battlestar. And I still don't know why that is. It did take Enterprise a little while to become a 9/11 show. And first of all, I'm not saying that it should have been a 9/11 show, but that's what we were going through that. And so we were attracted to media. I think there was no way it couldn't have been. There's a reason that 24 ran for like 9 seasons, right? We wanted to see a guy shoot terrorists in the face. And so, but the kind of thinking man's and woman's sci-fi that Trek had always represented was totally stolen by Battlestar, and it became like a phenomenon. And meanwhile, Star Trek is still on TV. You know, Sam Beckett's still doing stuff every week over on UPN, but people are just coming in droves to Sci-Fi to see this new show.
I like maybe it fulfilled a, you know, kind of a promise with Voyager a little bit, and it was like new, like, because I'm thinking about, I don't know, I didn't watch it at the time. I remember like my dad watching Star Trek and Battlestar at the time, and I don't know if they're like, I never got any insight about it, but it just feels like Enterprise. It's like this new prequel show, you know. It's like we've seen all this kind of thing, you know, just on a pure surface level. It's like I want to see something new, you know.
I remember hating Battlestar and refusing to watch it because, and there's no, I don't know if this is fully true, but like the year before they had canceled Farscape because they said it was too expensive. And so Farscape, which had just finished its 4th season and was like, could go to the moon and was one of the best sci-fi shows ever, they canceled. And then this show shows up. So for me, it was like, oh, this is the Johnny Come Lately show. Oh, we can't afford Farscape because we're making Battlestar Galactica. So I resented it for a while. Then I finally gave it a shot. And I immediately, it became weekly, you know, appointment viewing.
It kind of, it was kind of against that and Star Trek too, I guess. So.
Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to Star Trek.
Oh, fair enough.
I was not watching Enterprise at all.
Fair enough.
They have what Star Trek can't. Star Trek is, you know, Sandra Dee, sparkling with virginity. It's got to be this nice, we've got everything figured out world. And so they can never, I mean, this is changing with CBS Trek, but they can never really dig into the ugly side of being human, you know, the humanity. And Battlestar has that in, you know. It's got that in spades. Like that's all Battlestar is. And so you can have something like Adama and Rosalind like smoking weed at this party for the groundbreaking. And it's such a weird moment if you know the series because he's always been like the do your job, like, you know, tough admiral. And she's been this, you know, former Secretary of Education who's now the president of like the last humans alive. And they've been on this mission forever, but they found this kind of crappy little planet. And she found a nice place where they build their cabin. And yes, you know, Donald Trump Jr. is president now, but if they just give up, they can live here. They can smoke weed. They can be together. There's been this will they, won't they thing. And the whole time, like the president can't have sex with the leader of the remaining military. That doesn't look democratic, but they can just be normal people and be together. And so what if they do just give up? And, you know, the show kind of says you can't give up because ding dong, the Cylons have found you now. But, just the idea that you can explore something like that. And I guess Star Trek does that occasionally. You know, Picard gets a girlfriend, but you never think that he's going to choose the girlfriend over his job. Yeah,
no, it's like any kind of, it makes me think of any sitcom where someone starts dating someone. You're like, this is going to be over by the end of the episode.
Yeah. This can't go too far. Yeah. BSG does not have that problem. They have, there are many sudden deaths. There are many, huge changes of fortune.
That's cool.
It's kind of tough to see, Adama beat up on the chief when the chief is like, he's this kind of sad sack character that you really end up like rooting for. And he finally gets like a measure of like authority. Like on the planet, he became like this labor leader. Cause it turns out, the guy's Baltar's not a good president and he is not running the colony well and he's overworking the workers. And so he becomes kind of like this labor leader, this Cesar Chavez type character. And he really kind of gets a lot of like personal, just confidence and like satisfaction. And then they get back to the ship and he's like trying to be like the nice boss. And Adama wants everybody to get back in line. And so Adama's like, all right, I'm going to beat the piss out of this guy.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing now on board. I could just take him aside and go, Chief, you got to get the Vipers fixed. Like that's your job. He's like, no, I'm just going to beat him up in front of everybody.
Yeah, I was confused on if that was supposed to be inspiring or not, but I kind of liked it because I like this a different kind of world, you know.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. And when the old man gets involved, you know, everybody's like, oh, what's going to happen? But you know, there's a reason that the old man doesn't get involved because he gets the shit kicked out of him, and then he has to stand up and go, I think we've let ourselves go a little bit here, so this is over now, and the fun's over.
Well, that's he ruined it.
He did.
We were all having fun until the old man had to get beat up.
He did.
Yeah.
You know, in Star Trek, it's the old man just has to come down and play cards with us because it's fun. But Battlestar Galactica, it's like, no, I can never play cards with you guys. That's not how this works.
It's like the opposite, message.
The captain would never throw a dinner party for the bridge crew.
Oh, well, yeah, things are different. Well, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. Are we gonna let's make a YouTube video where we?
Yeah, I'll put a mask on.
Yeah, yeah. What would be your character? Your anti-Trek YouTube character.
My anti-CBS Trek character. I don't know. Let's not think about it.
Okay.
Makes it too real.
Yeah.
It's different because they're not. This is what. Okay, I hate because I love, right? Like, they're free now. Like, why is the storyline about them going to the 32nd century all about them bringing the Federation back and making everything like it was in the 23rd century?
That's what I was saying on your Discovery show. Like,
yeah. And I know that it's all about just like Battlestar Galactica, like once the Cylons show up, it turns into a story of occupation. There are security checks and suicide bombers, and like, we get it. But it's the same thing, only dumber now, where it's like, we've got this crazy guy's been in charge, and we've got to like restore everything and make, the Federation great again. And it's like, you don't always have to reflect exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And it sort of makes me think of, you mentioned it earlier about how like they are trying to grapple with these like darker concepts of things we're dealing with currently, but also like they're also kind of walking the tightrope of trying to like present this like inclusive future, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if they're doing it, and I think I'm seeing a lot of fans like kind of having a hard time grappling with that too. Of like, Starfleet's great, the future's great, we should all love each other, but we're also like telling the story about the dark things the military does and things like Section 31, And I don't know. I just don't know if it's not walking that tightrope for me in a way that like Deep Space Nine did,
Because Starfleet, in my opinion, because Star Trek is about humanity, I don't think there's anywhere that you can't go in terms of story material or like the issues that you're looking at, as long as they're from the lens of like a future civilization. But you can't like take an underwater show and then decide it's going to be on the moon, and you can't take like, if Boston Legal turned into a race car show, it'd be like a different show.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, them deciding to go 1,000 years into the future, futures aren't interchangeable. Like, do the work, as a sci-fi writer to decide like what it's going to be like. And I'm not talking about specific technologies like they have laser toothbrushes now. I mean, like, would there be humans or beings in ships going places in the future?
Yeah.
Would that all be gone? What if somebody invented the type of teleporting that they have in J.J. Abrams' Trek, where you can beam to another planet? Once you can beam to another planet, the need for a ship becomes almost nothing, except for, I guess, like the solely military aspect. So here's my pitch. What if you invent planet beaming? Starfleet is no longer an exploratory wing because you don't need to explore anymore. You can beam anywhere. And so Starfleet is fully military and is full of a bunch of like crazy guys who want control of space because for security, there's your political angle too. Instead, they just go in the future and people's clothes look different. And also, and they have smart matter that can make your bed turn into your office desk or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it isn't any different. And they have seeded a disaster into the history of the future that would arrest their development, but not really. That happens like 800 years from now instead of 900 years from now. So why does the future look almost exactly like it just looked when you left the 23rd century? That's what frustrates me.
I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess that works for me too. I just think like I just think like they broke the seal a long time ago on like the concept of Starfleet being this like futuristic, purely good organization, but like it just feels like the show is only thinking about like TOS and TNG when they're trying to like conceptualize where the show needs to go, and like it's like we need to get back to the way things were and not like we need to deal with what we've been told through like Deep Space Nine or Voyager or whatever, you know? Like it's a more complicated world, but like, but it seems like the show and all the characters, like the thrust of it is like, we need to get back to the good times before it was complicated. Which I think there's a way you can do that. But like,
yeah, not all boomers are conservative. Some of them are liberal as well, and they also feel like things were better in their day. So maybe that's what they're aiming for. I think it ties exactly back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is I think that you can show a government that is quote unquote perfect and that has worked it all out, but you can still tell stories about institutional corruption, about institutional discrimination and sexism that has been nominally eliminated from Starfleet without having to corrupt Starfleet. I think that they keep toying with these, you know, there's a conspiracy within Starfleet. An admiral is trying to do a coup. There are admirals. I think they keep trying to nibble at the edges of a story like that, but they feel like they have to completely break down and destroy the Federation to really tell a story about corruption and the fact that cracks will always appear in the institutions that humans create.
Yeah.
And they don't have to. You can tell that story, and like they did in DS9 with Homefront and Paradise Lost. Like they had a situation like that where these guys were scared of the response to the Dominion. They tried to overthrow the Federation. You still got Sisko got to do a lot of like beard stroking and navel gazing over if we're doing the right thing. And yet the Federation survived and continued to fight the Dominion. Like
yeah, totally.
You can do that. You don't have to go all or none, but they kind of want to go all or none, and yet they're not going all or none. And just back to Discovery, I don't even know what they're going to find when they finally find, quote unquote, the Federation.
I mean, maybe it's going to be, you know, the twist is like, oh, maybe we do need to tear it all down.
I think that would be an awesome twist. But the first guy that they find when they find like the Federation branch office of like Topeka, Kansas or whatever, there's the one guy who like he gets up every day and he combs his hair and he puts his suit on and he looks at his folded Federation flag and he's like, I'm still Federation. And I think that's supposed to be representative of like the whole, you know, the brave liberals that survived 4 years at Trump, where that could just be a crazy guy. Do you know what I mean? Maybe he's crazy to have been holding on to this for so long. Go down to the planet, you know, make some friends, have a drink, get involved in local government.
That's what I'm thinking is like,
this is not about boxing.
I'm still bothered by it's like they're trying to rebuild a specific state instead of, we're all here. Yeah. We should just take care of each other. And help anyone else we can. We should do. It
so misses the point.
Yeah.
And it's the liberal bones and flesh of this show and this franchise. That's what it is.
Yeah, it'd be like if I was transported 200 years into the future and I was like, okay, I gotta find the White House and make sure
where's Twitter?
I gotta re-ratify the Constitution.
Yeah,
it's like, well, at this point, I might as well just make my own new Constitution. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And you wouldn't have the context of the 200 years you missed. But, you know, the people who have been living for 200 years under that Constitution can go, our lives are a lot different than
that's true.
The
they
way
haven't
it was
stopped
when
to
this
ask
Constitution was framed.
They haven't stopped to ask anyone what they think would make the world better, except for those people on Earth that they were kind of like, shut up, you dummies.
Yeah. No, they're having family dinners. They don't have time for that.
Yeah. Like, yeah,
boxing.
They're colonizing the future now. You know, they're gone to the future.
They're colonizing the future,
and they're telling the future how it should be.
I'm going to use that on Discoverage tomorrow, and I think my co-host is going to quit on me. But that is genius. They are colonizing the future. I love it.
If Abraham Lincoln showed up today and started calling the shots, would anybody listen to him?
Well, he's got a space chair. He could do
that's
that.
fair. Yeah. Bow down.
Oh my God. All right. So I think we did it. I think we proved that it's a weird coincidence and there isn't enough material to talk about 2 episodes like that.
Well, it's just hard too with this specter of Discovery and like just new shows hanging over to not talk about them. Even though you already have a show where you do that.
I do. It's called Discoverage. It's on Thursday nights. We talk
go.
about new CBS Trek shows. Let's get to the next segment of our show. We talk about the technology that Star Trek characters have access to. And also, something that I like about Battlestar is they are in space, but it is nominally a hard sci-fi show. And it is much more like a naval show, like a carrier show, than it is a space show a lot of times. There's very little weird space stuff in the show. But that's okay. They still have high technology. And so on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. And we add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode and see how each will be different. It's a technological exchange. And the list of technologies that we use reads like this. It's phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And some, I think almost all of those. Well, no, not the phasers and things like that. Some of these technologies exist in the Battlestar Galactica universe. I'll roll on my random number selecting technology, which they have in Battlestar Galactica. And I got an 8. Shields. This is a good one. This is perfect, actually. If shields existed in the world of Battlestar Galactica, how would their world be different? I guess the specific episode, they don't deal too much with shields.
But they don't have them normally? Is it just like...
No,
okay.
They do not. They have... they might have directed energy weapons. I'm not sure, but generally they have... they're a carrier, like a...
It's like a big, thick ship.
Mm-hmm. So they have like flat cannons for fighters. They do have like howitzer, cannons, and then the nuke is really their biggest weapon. They fire literal nuclear missiles.
That's badass.
So they talk all the time about armor on the show. Like, yeah, they don't have shields.
That's cool. I feel like you mentioned it already, but kind of the futuristic presentation of that show feels kind of realistic. Because if you were on a big old thing floating through space, like, you wouldn't really encounter interesting stuff that often as you do on Star Trek. It'd be kind of boring.
Yeah, that's true. I think that, I guess, just trying to think about like the series as a whole, if defensive shields were something that everybody had, it would really, really reduce the effectiveness of the fighters, which are a big part of combat in Battlestar Galactica. It's one of the reasons that there aren't really fighters in Star Trek, I think, is because the ship is always surrounded by a shield that really only like another capital ship's weapons could take down. Somehow they balance it out well in Star Wars, where, yeah, ships have shields, but snub fighters are still effective because the exhaust ports or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, what do the fighters shoot in Battlestar? Just like
guns.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, just bullet guns.
Yeah, there should be. Yeah, I like when there's guns in the future.
I do too. Does somebody have a gun they have guns in Star Trek 5, don't they? On Nimbus 3.
Oh, yeah, I think they do, yeah.
Yeah.
With
their cigarettes.
That was a cool vibe, yeah. That was a good vibe. Yeah, I like that concept. I think the fighters is a cool thing. They do try to have that now in Star Trek too. They have like small ships now more often, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it's annoying.
I think if you well, yeah. I think if you add shields to Battlestar Galactica, it just becomes Star Wars. You just got Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because like the little Cylon Raiders probably wouldn't have shields, but Vipers would definitely have shields. So that's TIE fighters and X-Wings right there. And then Cylon base stars would have shields, but you have to like knock out the shield generators or something and then, shoot something right at the middle of them or something like that. You wouldn't get these exchanges like you have in Battlestar where, the Galactica, like just one side of the entire ship is just, alive with fire because all the guns just firing at a base star and the base star is shooting, nukes back at them.
I guess you wouldn't really see nukes, right? Like nukes went away in Star Trek too. Like they have them right around sometimes, but like
every once in a while they run into an alien that's got like, oh, they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, or they talk about like, oh yeah, we fought the Romulans before with nukes, but like we don't use those now because they're probably ineffective.
Which is weird because I haven't seen a nuke on the Enterprise in the NX-01 yet. I haven't seen the whole series, but at some point does Starfleet go, here you go, Archer, here's your nukes.
Maybe it's like you only get one.
You got one nuke now.
Keep track of it, don't lose it.
Be sure.
There's no shield. There's shields in the fight.
There could be like in Dune, like a personal shield. The slow punch beats the shield.
Okay. So add shields into the boxing match. Shield boxing could be cool.
That'd be kind of.
You would need gloves.
That'd be like. What if like there's no gloves, like just your hands are shielded? Yeah, my personal hand shields.
I would like to see more futuristic types of combat, like Ambo Jitsu or whatever.
We were talking about violent sports. They do have Parisi squares, which I think like people die playing Parisi squares.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. They always hype that up, and I don't. Do they ever show a game of it?
They don't. That's
good, actually.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's for a lack of budget or it is like a cool joke, like we're taking it, but it totally loses all of its coolness when you find out that Harry Kim was like a 3-time Parisi's champion in the academy. It's like, come on.
Anybody could do it then.
Yeah. Maybe they just told him that he was like winning, or he was in like the junior league or something like that.
He was playing against like grade schoolers.
Yeah. I thought it was a race that they're just smaller. This guy's lied to me. Dicks. All right. Well, anyway, let's go to the fight. Let's take Voyager's shields away. Now what?
They wouldn't. Would they last in chaotic space?
I feel like maybe the shields helped a little bit, but I feel like the kind of stresses that the ship were under were just like the literal space-time was, warping.
They wouldn't make it home. I don't think.
Yeah.
But
other than just killing them outright.
The show always writes around its limitations,
Yeah. Maybe they would have maybe they would have like taken a less egalitarian attitude towards meeting other races. They had opportunities for technological exchange that they sometimes, passed on, but maybe they'd be like, no, we need like whatever shields these guys have, or we see like the armored Voyager gets armor at one point, isn't it? I guess in the finale, right?
They should have put road spikes on it.
Like a Reaver ship from Firefly. Yeah. They just got like crap piled on top of it.
If you took shields away, maybe it would become Battlestar Galactica.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
And then you add shields to that, and it becomes Star Wars.
Well, the thing is, we'll never know because they never ever run out of resources, and because of the nature of not only the premise but the nature of how they decided to not like deliver on the premise, B'Elanna Torres and Harry Kim, between them, can invent and come up with anything that they need to whenever, ever. So if they didn't have shields, they would have come up with, something else, like a point defense system or just something that would like takes the place of it in one episode.
That would have been one cool way to like be like, we're different than everyone else. If it like the other Star Treks, is if like they lost their shields and then they had to like armor up like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, then we could get. Oh, I know where you're going. One step closer to your Hulk hand ship.
Yeah. Put a big. That's where the spikes would go. You have spikes and you have a big fist.
Right.
You could put it on like a chain and you could like shoot it off and like punch ships and then like reel it back in.
It grabs onto him.
Oh, yeah, it'd be like
Activate
the
Operation Smash.
it could be like the Packlids in the lower decks where they're like clawing people and bringing them in.
Right.
But instead, just knocking them out.
You know, the murderous Packlids, how bloodthirsty they are.
Yeah, traditionally, that's how they are.
Yeah.
They go fast.
They go fast.
Or whatever. They go. I forgot what they actually say.
What if they should say, we gotta go fast? Well, for 2 episodes about boxing, I think we did an okay job.
Yeah, and I got some things out about Star Trek that I've been meaning to say somewhere.
Yeah, I think we both did. Should we tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtracking?
Okay, so we're doing another unusual one. We're doing another Trek on Trek, where we're talking about the Discovery episode, If Memory Serves, and in comparison to the Cage, the one that started it all.
Yes.
That'd
and
be fun.
I guess that'll be another one where we're doing the Trek first there, or at least the earlier Trek first.
Flip it around, yeah.
Because they directly are connected to each other. And it's good. I've been looking to revisit that episode of Discovery too, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I don't really remember much about it other than seeing those big heads again. So.
Yep, the big head guys are back.
Thank goodness.
So we'll be back too in a little while, and that's it for this week's Backtracking. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, you tell a friend, and follow us on social media at Backtracking on Twitter, and tell us what you think that we should talk about in future episodes of the show. Gooey, tell people where they can find you online.
You can find me and all the other stuff I do. Just go to Twitter and find me at Gooey Fame.
Check that out, and you can find me at K1IBAN on Twitter, and all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that's it for us. We'll see you soon, and until then, keep on trekking.